This is ICASTnews.com, live and direct from the United Nations. I'm Linda FASULO, and welcome to State of Affairs. Our guest today is Russia's permanent representative to the United Nations, Ambassador Vitaly CHURKIN. And joining me as co-interviewer is Vladimir KIKILO. Welcome, Ambassador.
Thank you.
We know that your country is one of the 5 permanent members of the Security Council and thus has veto power, so that its views on key issues on the Security Council really matter. How does your country view its role at the United Nations, and how important is it to Russia's foreign policy?
Well, the United Nations is traditionally regarded in Russia as a cornerstone of international cooperation, international stability, and international security. Whenever you see policy statements from our president, UN would be at the very top of the list of international institutions he would be referring to. We are trying to be constructive. We are trying to be contributing to solving international problems, be it various international crises in the Security Council or other international problems like climate change or the economic and financial crisis, to the extent the United Nations is dealing with those problems. So we try to work with our P5 partners, with all the members of the Security Council, with all the members of the United Nations, in order to facilitate the resolution of those problems.
At this point in time, what do you see as the most important issues on the Security Council agenda? Where are the biggest threats to international peace and security?
Well, on the Security Council, I would, the things which are on the Security Council agenda are not necessarily sort of threats or looming threats or immediate threats, but those are problems which derive from certain threats to peace which were coming up in the course of the past few years. Now we have several important issues, I think, which are being closely monitored by the Security Council. We are going to discuss the future of the sanctions resolutions which have been imposed over the years on Iraq. We are monitoring very closely the situation in Afghanistan. We are very actively involved in considering the situation in Somalia. There are some indications of progress and prospect for a political solution after all those years of conflict. We are very closely involved in the matters of the Sudan, both with regard to Darfur and with regard to the referendum on the future of southern Sudan, which is coming in about 2 years. So this is a whole range of issues which on a daily basis we are monitoring in the Security Council.
We know that the relationship between the United States and Russia is an important one. How would you assess that relationship and the way it plays out here at the UN? Well,
first of all, I've been here over 3 years now, and I've had 3 American colleagues, counterparts, Ambassador John Bolton, Ambassador Zalmay Khalilzad, and now Ambassador Susan Rice. And of course, this is the second administration, and there is a considerable, obviously, policy change from the Bush administration, who were lukewarm towards the United Nations, and the Obama administration, who seem to have embraced the importance of multipolarity, including the United Nations. But I must say that we have always had very good personal and working relationship with our American colleagues, even though sometimes we were engaged in rather heated discussions of various issues. And I think overall we are cooperating well and we are helping produce good results. One example is the recent resolution which was passed in the Security Council after the North Korean nuclear explosion. It was a rather complicated and tense discussion. In a matter of 10 days we came up with a resolution, and I think now people are satisfied that it was a good resolution, that it was a balanced resolution, a targeted resolution. So even when sometimes some were complaining that Russia or China were not accepting some of the ideas which were put out by our colleagues, eventually I think that was a very good example of how important the unanimity of permanent members of the Security Council is, how important the fact, as you mentioned, that the permanent have a veto. So the decisions which are produced by the Security Council are inevitably balanced decisions, taking into account all the main views which are being brought to the table when various important subjects are being discussed. So I think that is one good example of effectiveness of our work on the Security Council and our good cooperation with our American colleagues on the Security Council.
How confident are you that this second round of sanctions against North Korea will make a difference?
We are not talking about any second round of sanctions. We passed a round of sanctions which sort of are being implemented through the Sanctions Committee and by member states of the United Nations. Now the idea is that we have sent a strong signal to North Korea of dissatisfaction and displeasure of the international community about their development of nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles. But now the task is to bring everybody back to the talks, bring North Koreans back to the talks. The six-party format, which has existed, which they announced they are working out of, we continue to believe is very important. But anyway, now is the time to come back, to try to come back to negotiations, because you can resolve the problem of the nuclearization of the Korean Peninsula only through negotiations, and the stability of the Korean Peninsula and that part of the world only through negotiations. So there is no discussion at all of some kind of a new round of sanctions in the Security Council. The Security Council has done its job. It is continuing to do its job through the implementation of the sanctions which have been passed. But as we see it, the main effort should be shifting now, and has shifted, in fact, towards the effort to reestablish a diplomatic dialogue on this matter.
Well, we know that North Korea says it doesn't want to go back to the six-party talks, and seems to be reaching out for direct one-on-one talks with the United States. Are you in favor of
Well,
this?
it's up for the United States to decide how they want to deal with various situations. But I think we all share, including the United States, we all share the understanding that the best vehicle to solve this problem is the six-party talks. In fact, the sort of the tragedy of it all is that the six-party talks produced a good result back in 2005. And then there were a number of hitches, and they were not necessarily coming from North Korea, where the opportunities which existed in that document which was produced were not fully exploited. So we continue to believe that the best way is to go back to the six-party talks.
What hitches are you referring to?
Well, there were some unfortunate developments. Well, for example, I think that document was signed on the 19th of September 2005, if I recall correctly. And the next day, the United States announced some sanctions against the North Korean bank, etc., etc. They were explaining to us that that was just by accident, a kind of a coincidence in time. Mm-hmm. But, of course, you would not be surprised if the North Korean would have treated it as sort of a ruse or strange tactics. When the day after you reach agreement, you make a decision which takes you away from the agreement which you have just reached. Mm-hmm. And it's maybe, in fact, it's true that there was such a level of discoordination among various agencies in the United States. But in terms of the implementation of the strategy which was embodied in the six-party talks, that was not helpful at all. But anyway, the past is the past, but the work which has been done by the six-party talks has been very important, and of course it did involve also economic assistance to North Korea, so they should have a vested interest in continuing with that format. In fact, a fact which I think many people do not know is that Russia has invested not only a lot of diplomatic effort, but also financially has invested quite a lot in the process, because as a part of the arrangement which was reached in the six-party talks, for example, Russia supplied $100 million worth of heavy fuel oil to North Korea. I mean, this is a sizable sum of money and a sizable economic contribution to the general arrangements which were conducted within, discussed and arrived at within six-party talks. So even in terms of the economic aspect of it all, not just the diplomatic, that everybody can chip in diplomatically, but the economic aspect of it all, we believe that the six-party format is the most rational one.